Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Your Intention Matters, the podcast. Thanks very much for being here. My name, of course, is still Paul Bott. Today, I have Ryan Bott. He is Global Vice President of Revenue coming from Sodexo, if I got that right, in Salt Lake City in Utah. Ryan, man, how are things?
Paul, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. You know, before I hit record, I was asking you about your backdrop. For those of you checking in, Ryan's got this on the video. Ryan's got this backdrop that it's a pretty sick mountain back there, but we haven't quite deciphered where that is.
Right. I think it's somewhere in Europe, right? And I probably should know. I travel to Europe quite a bit, but I definitely know it's not in Utah where I live and ski. I ski a lot, and I can guarantee it's not here. But, you know, maybe it could be actually even up in Vancouver. I don't know.
Maybe it could be Whistler. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, Ryan, I appreciate you being here. Do me a favor, say hi to everybody, provide a quick intro, and then we'll jump into your episode.
Sure. Well, thanks. Hi, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to sit and chat for a minute, and hopefully you'll listen. Hopefully you'll get something out of this. I mean, I don't know, maybe you're driving somewhere, maybe you're in between, meetings, who knows? But yeah, my background, gosh, I work, well, now I'm at a company called Sodexo. I tell people it's the 17th largest company in the world that you've never heard of, because a lot of people haven't, but it is quite large. It's almost 450,000 employees, and it's headquartered out of Paris, France. It's a 60-year-old company that's been doing amazing things in the world. So we focus on the everyday. We bring quality of life to people all around the globe. We have 100 million interactions with consumers every day, everything from food to facility management to software. So if you've gone to LinkedIn headquarters in San Francisco and had lunch or coffee, that's our food. If you went to the Super Bowl in Miami, that was our experience. So it's things like that. And then a lot of hospitals. So during the pandemic, our people just worked nonstop to keep the places clean and keep food there and all the things in between. But the Sodexo, and gosh, it's been a very fun journey, even to get to this point.
I love it.
25 years of lots of sales, lots of marketing, lots of demand gen, head of sales, startups, non-startups. So where would you like to start, Paul?
I love it. Well, listen, are you married, father, both, neither?
5 kids, beautiful kids. And one is in Dominican Republic. And right now just doing some service work. And then we've got 4 kids, high school, junior high. Busy. Youngest is 8. And so I'm one of those guys who's an executive, but also very busy at home and doing all the right things. So
I love it. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being here now, knowing that you've got the 5 kids in addition to your role at work as well. And so, Ryan, we were talking before I hit record, and really the title of the podcast, as you know, is Your Intention Matters. And it's really, really, the foundation is, I just don't think anything is given to any of us, quite frankly. And most of us in the world of sales never thought we'd even get into it. And yet here we are. And I'm looking forward to you sharing your story. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, here we go.
Absolutely.
We're going back in time in this podcast. Let's go back circa mid-late 90s, Weber State. I see bachelors of arts, English and writing. I don't see revenue in there. I don't see sales in there. I don't see business in there. When you were getting ready to start, Ryan, if you go back in time, did you have a thought or a vision about what you thought you'd be doing? Or were you like most of us, you get your degree and you kind of figure it out?
Yeah, what's so interesting, Paul, is Weber State is actually one of the first, if not maybe the first place in the country to put a sales degree in their program.
I didn't know that.
And so I have a twin brother, and he was going through the program. He took some of the classes. I don't know that he actually graduated from the program, but anyway, they began there. And so I did get a little bit of influence from some of the professors there that were, running the sales program. But that wasn't my focus. It's an interesting journey because I knew that I wanted to get an MBA, and that was about it. I love to ski. I was fly fishing a lot and skiing a lot. And one day when I came home from skiing, I pulled up my transcripts and I thought, wait, how far along am I? And realized I only had about 6 months left. And I thought, wait, how did this happen? And I had somehow actually accelerated through college, not even knowing it. So I was ready to graduate in 3 years. Like, what? How did this happen? I
Yeah.
was taking all these credits. Meanwhile, I was still skiing. And anyway, I realized, okay, let's just go get your MBA. Then I did some homework and said, well, half of the MBAs admitted are from a arts and humanity background, a Bachelor of Arts. Okay, well, then do something and focus on English and writing. I mean, everyone, I don't know if I had this spidey sense to think we're going to live in a world where everything's written, and sure enough, here we are. Everything's texted, everything's blogged, everything's, and I got really good at writing. It's totally paid off, by the way.
I love it. And so did you actually get into any type of a career, that allowed you to do that? Or was it right into business and sales right away?
So when I was graduating from college, I actually did start a couple of my first sales jobs. One was I was selling online. There's somebody had sort of video compilation of so these training videos, and we were selling the videos. And I was a complete failure. Then I was out knocking doors selling alarm systems at one point, and pretty much complete failure. It was actually when I was knocking doors that I realized that I thought, well, wait, we need to seed the demand. We need to figure out, like, these people need to see something, and then they'll be more open to talking to us. And I sense that debate. By the way, that's a really fun debate I have now, is do you need to see the demand, or should you just rely on natural sales skills? And I actually have arguments for both. But back then I was totally convinced, I need to canvass the entire neighborhood, drop flyers off, sort of parachute around, and then I'll come back the next day and say, hey, you got my flyer, right? And it worked okay. It worked okay. I was pleasantly surprised. I had 3 or 4 doors say, sure, let's talk. I got your flyer. Right. But I realized then, I thought, well, why wouldn't I figure this out a little bit better? And that's when I was going into my MBA, I really focused on, actually, they didn't call it demand gen, but on the marketing side, to see demand for sales. And that opened up a whole new world for me in selling. By the way, can I tell one last quick story?
Floor is yours.
Really, the first sales job I ever had was completely nefarious. And what it was it was a complete mishap. This really wasn't a job, but there was an amusement park here in the Salt Lake City area called Lagoon. And I went to Lagoon, and I had a season pass. And back then you would present your season pass at the ticket window, and they would give you a ticket, and then you'd enter the park. That's how you redeemed your season pass for the day. And so I showed them my season pass, and instead of handing me one, they handed me 10 tickets. Mm-hmm. And Paul, I'm not kidding you. It never even crossed my mind, right? And I'm an ethical person, and I believe in honesty. It never even crossed my mind to turn the 9 tickets back. The first thing I thought of is, if I sold these, I would make a lot of money. So there I got in the parking lot, and I sell the 9 tickets, and I made like $400. And my friends were with me, and we were like, everyone, we're spending the whole day. We're going to buy the funnel cakes, and we're going to buy the cotton candy, and everything's on me. Right.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, as I'm getting all my friends excited, and we're just on cloud 9, security guard walks up, and he pulls on my shirt. He says, come with me. Oh my gosh. I walked into the office. There's the general manager of the entire amusement park. And he has scissors out with my pass in it. And he says, this is the last warning. And he goes, chop. And he pulls my pass out at the last second. And I thought, well, what did I do wrong? He said, right. You sold tickets that you didn't, that's our money. Oh, it was hilarious.
Ryan, where'd you get your MBA?
Arizona State.
Arizona State. Okay. Are you from Arizona, or are you from Utah? And why to go ASU?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Salt Lake City area. And then I lived in South America for a while, lived out of country. When I came back, I immediately started doing some work in Mexico, doing for a company called Market Star, helped them open offices around Latin America, did some due diligence for them down there. And anyway, I thought, okay, I like Utah, but I'm not sure this is, where I wanted to stay. And anyway, I applied a couple places that I didn't get into. So I applied to Wharton. So anyone who's listening that got their MBA from Wharton, whatever. I'm just kidding. I didn't get in. But anyway, I kind of wanted sort of that next tier of schools. They were ranked, I think, 18th at the time in the country. And I said, why not go to Arizona? I didn't really know Arizona that well. But yeah, so went down, got my MBA there, and loved it. I mean, it was a tremendous program. My favorite class was actually on organizational behavior, just knowing the design of orgs and org structures, and how is it that you can motivate people based on the design of a structure of an organization.
When you finished your MBA, did you stay in Arizona or did you head back to Utah?
Stayed for just a little bit. And it's interesting. Utah had some old money. You sort of look at the recipe for a high-tech explosion, and you need a couple ingredients. The Bay Area proved this, which was, and I worked in the Bay Area for a long time, but you need universities. So you need students, right? You need input. Now, universities typically in the Bay Area attracted international students as well. So you had diversity background. And then but you needed that young talent mix to be your next crop of hiring. You needed capital, and you basically needed land. And like Utah was the perfect recipe for this, and it exploded maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. But I was pre that. I was pre when Novell, when WordPerfect was here and started sort of the very first tech money, and then sold to Novell. And that was the beginning of some old money. And so I had some of that money. There was a startup running, and they sent me pre-LinkedIn, right? So I didn't even know who was who, but I got a call one day and someone said, "Oh yeah, someone referred us to you. You just got your MBA. We'd love to hire you." I'm like, okay. And so I was all excited because I basically came up to be, well, I should say this. When I was getting my MBA, I actually did do work at the tail end. I worked for that same company, Market Star, but we were contracted. I worked for that Schneider Electric. So back then it was American Power Conversion, and that was putting power into data centers. So that's when I first started selling, really selling, ran channel account management. And then the same thing when I came up for this company was, hey, come help run our channels, be channel sales, be direct sales. And my claim to fame was I got their first contract. Well, I collected their first revenue. They had given a bunch of stuff for free. And I basically went to one of the very first clients and said, "When are you going to pay us?" Yeah. And I said, "We're pulling the product out of, pay." "Oh, no, you can't do that." "Well, we are." And so I got their I collected their first revenue they had ever had. It was a small startup. It ended up failing completely, but it was what got me back here.
Well, Ryan, I got into sales through the Xerox channel in a totally different element than what you experienced, at least early on in your career. And when I first got into sales, I didn't have any sales background at all. I have a bit of a finance background. And so I was a numbers guy. And then I was out of work and I needed a job. And a buddy of mine said, "Well, Xerox is hiring in a sales role. Why don't you go apply?" And I'm like, "Sales? I don't want to do this." And it just really wasn't in my scope at all. I kind of had a grimy feel to it when I would hear the word sales, thinking I had to force people to do stuff they didn't want to do.
Yep.
And then you realize it's not really that way if you do it the right way. But what I'm curious about is when you got into sales as a profession, and your schooling is all behind you. Weber's done, ASU's done, and now this is where you have to do this to earn a living and pay the rent and everything else. Did you take to sales right away as a profession? Did you struggle like I did in my first year? And what was it like for you?
Well, no, it's great. Yeah, great point. So if I delineate along the lines of carrying a bag versus managing, I carried a bag for 3 years, partly during my MBA. I'm not counting those early stuff of,
sure.
The videos and whatever, that knocking doors, and that's not counted, but 3 years carrying a bag. When I got my MBA, right after I carried the bag for this little company. And that's when I said, well, wait a minute, Brian, remember how much you loved sort of the demand gen side? And I really started exploring that. And so my MBA became super handy real quick. And that was to be able to figure out how do you actually build the motion of revenue. Um, and and so what was interesting is I was moderately successful. I mean, I was just sort of middle of the pack in sales, right? But immediately I as I watched and I sort of watched even other companies, I just got really good at saying, well, wait, what are they doing? What are good companies doing? What are not good companies doing? And what's the playbook? And that's what got me my next job was I basically sold my way into a company called Landesk Software, which was part of Intel. And then they got bought by Avicent, which turned into, I forget their name now, but quite big.
Okay.
We grew from, I don't know, 400 people to 2,500 people while I was there. Super fun. And that's when all of a sudden sales became real for me. It became a real profession at that point because I was working with sales leadership. I was sort of in sales leadership because I was running channel accounts, channel marketing, and I was helping figure out how do you really build demand. I'd launched some partnerships, well, we as a team, but with IBM and Dell, and like all of a sudden sales went from hey, come over, what do you like about this car? Well, what I can upgrade the tires for free if you buy today. And like it went from that to holy crap, there is an entire universe and it's all under the umbrella of revenue. And there are like arguably 25 different roles under that umbrella. That's when it got exciting for me.
When did you move into a leadership role on the sales side, and what was behind that? Because it's totally different jobs, different skill sets, different requirements, et cetera. So what was behind the decision, and where were you when you got your opportunity to actually be in the sales leadership side?
Yeah, well, so I supported a lot of the sales function at Landesk, then had a really fun role. Well, I'll sort of tell you two things. Had a really fun role at Fusion IO, and Fusion IO was just this awesome company that we went from, gosh, when I started, we had 6 salespeople, and we end up right around 250, I think peaking at 350.
They're in the Bay, right?
Well, we were headquartered in Salt Lake City, and then we opened an office in the Bay.
Gotcha.
And there was a head of sales, and then we changed, and all of a sudden we brought in a chief revenue officer named Jim Dawson, and just one of the best sort of hidden gems and unkept secrets that no one knows about. He's not really on LinkedIn, just really good at what he does and built an amazing sales culture. I sort of watched that and just studied nonstop, and he was nice enough to promote me into basically sort of running multiple things. So I ran sales operations, I ran all sales productivity, which was, I had all of the inside sales teams, the SDRs, I had inside closers, I had demand gen teams, I had partner teams, and then productivity was all the training, the enablement, the sales kickoff. So I really got to see revenue firsthand and how it works and all the pieces of it. And that was a 4-year run. When I left there, I went to be head of SMB sales for a company in the Bay Area, and they fired my boss.
At Fusion.
No, right after Fusion.
Gotcha.
And so a company called Guild, and it was in HR tech software. It was a hiring software. And anyway, I get there, and they parted ways with my boss, and they said, "You're head of sales, like you own the whole thing." And I said, okay, here we go. And I can still remember, Paul, it was July. And I thought, all right, they have not hit a number in 2 or 3 years, really.
Yeah.
And everything was judged on a monthly basis because it was, it was all SaaS. And I said, all right, we're going to hit July. And I pulled the team together. We did some amazing things. And next thing you know, and I'm just every day, I'm going 12 hours a day, just making sure I hit the number. I did not want to miss my first number as the person. And sure enough, we hit, and we hit again, and we hit again. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my career. there's a lot that went into how did we turn that team around? How did we start hitting our numbers?
Why did you leave Fusion IO? It sounded like it was a pretty good run for you. Was it,
Yeah.
what happened there?
What's interesting is I got a little itchy. So if I
Did
look
you?
back and just be vulnerable, I probably got a little too itchy. Where I thought, it was just under 4 years. What's next? I want to be just something more. Ultimately it was not a bad decision because Fusion IO really went through some tough challenges. Actually, right after I left, things started changing quite a bit. They had gone public, so we IPO'd when I was there. It was super fun, and then they went back to being a private company. They were bought by SanDisk. They were bought by Western Digital, and anyway, so a lot of turnover happened. So it wasn't actually bad, but I think the main reason was I just kind of getting itchy. What's next?
Yeah, I get it.
And I think ultimately, if I look at it, 4 years is a good run. There's this notion that, well, 2 years as a VP of sales is kind of the average tenure, but I actually think we really need to strive for 4. And the reason why is you just don't, like, year 1 is you're trying to get everybody behind you. Year 2, you finally start to make your changes. And I know that sounds crazy, and there are going to be people that debate me that listen to this, say there's no way it can't ever take that long. Well, but it does. I've been in startups, I've been in huge enterprise companies like I am now. It just takes that long to get things really built around emotion. And so years 3 and 4 are actually the productivity years. You get your way. I'm seeing this now at Sodexo. We built a thing. So I can tell you more in a while, but they said, listen, come build all demand gen pipeline. We don't have an engine that does that. I said, great. Build inside sales teams, build revenue operations. I said, great. We're just now going into year 3 in North America. And I'm like, it is so fun. It's so fun because now we've got to a point where it's really gotten sustainable. We've got good leaders. We've got the motion in play, and it's working. So I guess to answer your question, I think after 4 years, you say, okay, it took 2 years to really get it in motion. It took 2 years to really see the success, and maybe I'll go do that again.
Well, you know what? It's interesting that you talk about you kind of got the itch, because I think a lot of people, checking this episode out can appreciate that, and they kind of get it because you're seeing a trend today, and you might be seeing this in your role where you are, where 18 months, 24 months in, people are jumping ship, the grass is greener, and it's like they start to think about either a recruiter calls them up, I should start looking. And so I think a lot of people can respect it. Hey, you kind of took a look and you made it work where you were. It sounded like you at Citadel, you found yourself in a spot that you weren't exactly expecting shortly into your tenure there. And how long were you there once you were given the reins to go create the sales?
Yeah. Well, I came in as VP of SMB. What was it? Yeah, SMB sales. And within 3 months is when they said, nope, you're SVP of sales. And so it was pretty quick. And it was, the company was called Guild. They were a Menlo venture funded company. Pretty well. Menlo funded a lot of places. Most notorious was Uber. But anyway, Menlo, so high trajectory growth while we were there. It was great. But then they sold the whole thing to Citadel, kind of on an exit that but anyway, so I was there.
Was that what happened? Were you packaged off?
Well, right after I left, it was either one of those, hey, we're going to keep pursuing for an IPO. They needed some sort of exit. Long story, but they were in that position where they needed to do something. And I had a buyer. I don't think that worked out. I don't know the whole story because I wasn't there.
Yeah, okay.
But then Citadel Bank bought them and basically used the IP, the technology was all they needed. So I can't say it was a super successful startup, but while we were there, we really turned things around, which the team that I had was just unbelievable. These men and women that were there, was awesome. So good.
Were you still in the Bay at this time?
Yeah. So right after Fusion IO, and about halfway through is when, well, probably the first third, they said, hey, we need to start moving space and building an office in the Bay Area. So we were down the very South Bay, sort of right off the, what is that, the 237, right by Mountain View. There's a little, the South Bay Freeway, there's a little spot called El Viso. People know it because there's a nice taco lunch there, and a little taco stand and Mexican restaurant. But that's about it. So we were there originally, and then we moved to San Jose and built out office. So I had really, as I was building my team, half of them or over half of them were in the Bay Area, and then the other half were here.
Gotcha. And sir, but where were you based? You were based in the Bay as well, or you were?
I never did move out of Salt Lake City, so I stayed
you
here.
never
And I
did?
moved back and forth there every other week for Fusion, and then when I went to Guild Citadel, I was downtown San Francisco on California Street for 2 years and just basically commuted every week.
Gotcha. And so the transition from individual contributor into a leadership role, been a good one for you? You've enjoyed it?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's really interesting because there's two ways there's a couple ways to get there. But really two that I can think of that are very most common. And that is, I become really good at my job as an individual contributor, and then someone gives me a shot to be a leader. I do not believe in that at all. I don't think it's the model. I don't think it works. So sorry for those who are listening and say, well, come on, Ryan. I really don't. I don't think that the two have high correlation. They have a little bit of causation, but like, it's not really
Totally different jobs.
If this, then that does not work in that scenario. And I've done it. I've hired a lot of people who I thought, okay, you were my top performer, and all I did was end up losing my productivity on the team. So then I have to backfill all that performance they had, and then the team wasn't really working out. And so I look at, well, how did I get there? I ask that question. I literally forced my way in. I jumped into, I'm just getting into Fusion IO. I mean, the founders could tell you this guy just was super persistent. He pushed and said, I'll learn, I'll do whatever. And I came in basically through the marketing side, running channel marketing, channel partnerships. And then that turned into, well, let me help be the right-hand man and run every revenue operations for the CRO. So that was how I got there. And it was not at all because someone noticed my performance carrying a bag. And I couldn't even really say that I was that successful at doing it. Again, I was, probably top half. It was, 40% percentile.
Well, it kind of ties into the whole title of the podcast, where intention matters, because you're the one who created that result versus waiting to just prove yourself in one role and then get tapped on the shoulder to do another role, which, to your point, so many companies do it. And yet the two roles are not, other than the fact that they are under the sales umbrella, the requirements and the responsibilities or from a leadership role versus carrying a bag role are about as night and day as they get.
Totally. 100%. And what happens is we think, oh, sales is sales, and it's not. You will get, okay. So think about this, Paul, for a second. Half of the performance of a team is based on the fact that they know what they're doing. They're good at their job. They know how to write an email. They know how to do a pitch. They know how to, follow an outreach sequence, a cadence sequence. They listen to themselves on Chorus or Gong, and they figure out, okay, I'm good or I'm not good, and here's where I'm going to improve. Like, half of it is you just get good at your job. The other half is I'm bought into this program. I'm all in. I've got an inspirational leader who I love to follow. I'm motivated. I want to do better. I want to be a better salesperson, and my boss has made it really clear that that's important, and I believe him. And so you could basically just boil it down to EQ and IQ, right? So emotional and intelligence. And when you go through, what's interesting is I went through a lot of coaching. Heaven knows I need it, right? Leadership coaching. And some of my first leadership coaches just blew my mind, opened my mind to you're missing the entire EQ side of things. Things like they don't trust you, they don't believe you, when you don't hold them accountable. And I got a list of cards here. These are cards. I went through some leadership training. You probably can't see those. These are cards where my peers on the executive team wrote all the things that they didn't think I was doing well. And talk about an eye-opening offsite when you we had to stand there and write. Told all our peers, and basically the statement was, our team would be a better team if you ... and you had to fill in the blank. I got 9 of these. And then you have to stand up in front and let everyone read it off to you, and all you can do is ask questions. Talk about being vulnerable, right? You can't defend it, and then those who get defensive, it just doesn't work. Well, there's a whole EQ side to that, and that's what carrying a bag does not teach you. I am a firm believer that I can double productivity based off of how good they are at the job, the IQ side. I can get them good at their job. I can get another 35%, 50% out of a sales rep if they're bought in, if they believe me, if I know how to lead them, if I know how to motivate them. And I spend a lot of time on that. I have a whole formula that goes into it. And so anyway, I don't know why are we talking about this other than
it's just a conversation, man. We love it. We're going.
Carrying back doesn't translate.
Ryan, I want to ask you a question. So you've been at Sodexo for coming up on about 5 years now, right? Do I have that, give or take?
No. I've been there 4 years.
4 years. Okay. So 4 years now. Okay. So the way you're showing up to me on this podcast as we're talking is a guy who's charismatic, outgoing, confident, passionate, and just you kind of in the room, kind of a guy let's get going, and just that's how you're showing up to me. 2 of your 4 years at Sodexo have been pandemic, lockdown, Zoom, WebEx, Teams, etc. And so how have you managed the last couple of years? Because the way I'm hearing you is like, you get this guy in the room and you've got control of the room, but have you struggled with like Zoom and WebEx, and like, how have you handled the last couple of years?
Well, from a technological standpoint, no, it's been great. Look, so if you go back to when I first really got going at Landesk and understood the landscape of revenue, my eyes were opened, and I was just all in on, okay, what's the playbook? And that's when I ran into Aaron Ross, right? And Jason Lemkin. And this was like the second Dreamforce. And I'm running into these guys who I think are the godfathers of the whole SDR movement, because Aaron built it at Salesforce, and I was just all in. I couldn't consume it fast enough. And so that early on got me really bent on inside sales as the future. So we at Sodexo have been a very largely field-based sales model.
Gotcha.
So I couldn't be more excited. I threw a whole virtual selling camp. I recorded 25 sessions. I had guests come on. We did podcasts. I had industry leader speakers. They were all doing this for free, by the way, because they're like, I don't know what else to do. It's pandemic.
Right.
I probably spent $100,000 without spending anything. And it was amazing. I got $100,000 worth of talent for spending zero. And we did these podcasts, and we had virtual selling camp, and we published it to the whole company. So field sales and marketers and you name it are watching these things and learning, oh, wait, how do I turn on my camera? How do I put lighting in front of me, not behind me? How do I run a virtual background? When is it appropriate to share my screen? It was just sort of everything. And so for me, it was really fun to just jump in and do something. But I don't know. I'm always just a believer of idleness is what creates, makes us stir crazy. So you just be doing something. So whether I was right or wrong, I picked like 6 things, and we got the team to do it, and we did it. And then we focused on retooling the entire engine, and we're having the best year in terms of building pipeline that we've ever had. Hands down.
Well, congrats on the results. I have to tell you, that was not the answer I was expecting at all. I was expecting to hear, yeah, man, I feel like a caged animal here. I got to get out there. And so congrats on being able to, weather it and just get the results during, pretty choppy waters over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, thank you. It really was. It was like this perfect time to show people the value of inside selling. And you don't always have to be in the field. And by the way, I mean, you see all the studies now, Gartner, McKinsey, I've got them all. And they just continually point that it was a 40% jump in what the customer wants, a 40% jump towards inside sales motion. They don't need us there. They don't actually want us there, not until the final stages of the sell. So we got to get really good as a salespeople, really good. We got to come together and get really good at knowing how to do all this stuff virtually up front and then go in as needed based on the size of the deal.
Well, listen, Ryan, I appreciate you being here. I've got just one more question for you. I'm kind of new to skiing this year. Where I live in just outside Toronto, we've got these hills called Blue Mountain, and I'm considered a one. I'm on the only slope I can ski is called Big Baby. It's an adult hill, but it's like not
Don't
even.
admit this.
It's not even. It's all recorded. It's all out there. So I'm curious. You're an avid skier. You mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast. If you had your go-to in terms of where you'd love to ski the most, where's your go-to place?
It's so funny because like I look at this peak right here, right? So here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a chute right there, and then you could take that cliff right there. So, I mean, listen, I grew up and absolutely love skiing Alta here in Utah, and it's a skier's mountain. It's sorry, snowboarders. We still we still segregate, I guess, if you will. But you got Deer Valley and Alta, who do only allow skiers. It's just a skier's mountain. There's not frills there. There's not big resort anything. It's just go ski, cheap and deep. Cheap. The prices have always been relatively cheap. They're super high now, but and deep powder, and they get more snow than anyone. So I just love Alta, but that's because I'm a powder hound. Now I do have a pass to Snow Basin, and I shouldn't announce this because it's like the local secret.
Okay.
But if you really want to have some fun, pick a storm. If you can just, I mean, it's hard because you book your tickets in advance, you get your flights, and then, there's no snow. But if you were a storm tracker and you wanted to just fly out on a storm and go to Powder Mountain, like that is the locals gym, and they don't groom but probably 2/3 of that resort ungroomed.
Is that Utah?
It's in Utah. They have cats. Big Sky, by the way, up in Montana, same thing, a lot of powder. They have cats. They have, at one point, Snow Basin, Powder Mountain has these little snowmobiles that take you out. Now that said, I got to admit, I haven't skied anywhere other than Utah, Idaho, Montana. So I now I can't really say Whistler, even though I hear great things about it. I can't say. Well, this year in California they did well. My boss, he's super avid skier, and they do heli skiing all throughout Europe, and he loves it.
Well, if you ever make your way to Toronto, let me know, and I'll take you up to Blue Mountain, take you up to Big Baby, and we can shred Big Baby together.
Shred Big Baby. Is that the one where to get back up, do we ride a little, carpet? Or is there an actual lift?
There's an actual lift. There's an actual lift, but there is a kiddie hill where the kids learn, and that's where I first learned, and I'm proud enough to admit it. But Big Baby is the adult hill, but it's not really the top of the hills, and it's all I can muster up at this point in my skiing career. So anyways, well, listen, Ryan, thanks so much for being here, man. What a great ride, and congrats on all the success, and I appreciate you sharing your story. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. It was an honor. Appreciate you.
You bet. All right, everybody, let's wrap it up right now. Remember, your intention matters. Why? Because that's the result you'll tend to get. We're out of here. We'll do it again next week, and let's go Leafs.